morning, everyone. Good morning. If I could ask you to take your seats. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Government Affairs Forum. As you look around the room, I don't have to tell you that this is a sold-out morning, and it's sold out for a good reason. We're here to welcome Mayor Martin Walsh for his annual address to the business community and the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. We're always grateful to have the mayor here. And joining him today, and I want to recognize his partner and I know advisor, Lori Higgins. Lori, thank you for joining us today. I do want to give a shout out to a few other people in the audience. First, a partner of mine in the Recovering Chief of Staffs group, the Mayor's Chief of Staff, Dave Sweeney. We have a support group for Chiefs of Staff, and Dave is part of that. I also, we're enjoying quite a development and building boom here in Boston, and the Mayor has a great team that he leads in this area. Foremost among those, the Chief of Economic Development, John Barrows, and Brian Golden, the leader of the BPDA. And leading us from the public safety perspective, please give a welcome to Fire Commissioner Joe Finn and Police Commissioner Willie Gross. And if I named all of the members of the Mayor's Cabinet that are here, I'd be serving you lunch. So I just ask you for a round of applause for all of the members of the Mayor's Cabinet that are here today. I also want to welcome a couple of members of the State Senate. State Senator Nick Collins and State Senator Joe Boncory are here with us today. From the House of Representatives, Aaron Michaelwitz, Dan Hunt, and Russell Holmes have joined us. Please give them a round of applause. And from the Boston City Council, Councilor Anissa Asabi-George, Councilor Ed Flynn, Councilor Michael Flaherty, and Councilor Kim Janey. Also joining us today is Walter DeWitt, the consulate from the Netherlands. Please give the Consul General a welcome. From the education sector, Chair of the Boston School Committee, Michael LeConto, and Interim BPS Superintendent, Lauren Perrell. As well as UMass Chancellor Catherine Newman and new Suffolk University President, Marisa Kelly. Please welcome our Council President. And finally, Tanisha Sullivan, President of the NAACP. Please welcome Tanisha. And my friend Darnell Williams, President of the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts. Now, this is Mayor Walsh's, I believe, his fifth address to the Chamber since he was elected, but the first address of his second term. We're happy to have him back. We're happy to work with the mayor, with whom we have a great deal of alignment in terms of purpose, which is to make Boston and indeed Greater Boston the best place for all businesses and all people to thrive. In particular, Mayor Walsh has demonstrated that he shares a deep commitment to keeping Boston a competitive place, both for businesses and our talented workforce, with his aggressive housing goals his commitment to economic growth and economic equality, and his work to improve the perceptions people have about the region as a welcoming place. It makes a big difference when the business community can work with an elected official, particularly a major city mayor like Mayor Walsh. We value that partnership. Thank you, Mayor, for being here today, and thank you for your continued partnership with the business community. We're going to get things started, but a few commercial messages before we do. Following up on this address by Boston Mayor Marty Walsh, we will have a Government Affairs Forum on November 8th. We will bring together a regional forum of mayors. The mayors of Braintree, Framingham, Lynn, and Newton will come together to discuss many of the issues that can only be solved through regional cooperation. We all know what they are: transportation and housing. I'm sure Mayor Walsh will talk about some of those things today. In December, we invite you to join us for our annual holiday party on December 4th at Tuscan Kitchen in the Seaport. And looking into 2019, please save the date, February 1st. It's the 25th anniversary edition of our Pinnacle Awards, the largest celebration of women professionals in the region. We are reviewing nominations now and will announce the honorees in the coming month. But tables are already going quickly, and I know that this event will sell out. So please look at our website, bostonchamber.com, for information about this event and other activities of the Chamber. I do want to take a quick moment to thank our media partners, WBUR and Comcast, who help make our government affairs programs available to a wider audience. In fact, today's program is actually live streaming on necm.com as we sit in this room. And to introduce the Mayor, I want to thank our long-standing government affairs partner, Bank of America. Thank you, Miceal, Chamberlain, and the entire B of A team for your support. With that, I'm pleased to welcome Miceal Chamberlain, Massachusetts President of Bank of America, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Jim, for the kind introduction, and good morning and welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased to have the honor to be able to introduce today's special guest speaker of the Government Affairs Forum, our city's mayor, Mayor Martin J. Walsh. Mayor Walsh's vision is of a thriving, healthy, and innovative Boston, a city with equality and opportunity for all, where revolutionary history inspires creative solutions to the challenges of the 21st century. Now in his second term as mayor, Mayor Walsh has focused on strengthening Boston's schools and has led Boston to the forefront of the global innovation economy by attracting industry-leading private sector employees, upgrading the city's digital infrastructure, and using technology to transform government services. At the same time, the mayor has led important conversations on economic opportunity and created powerful tools to help create more of it, including a robust economic inclusion and equity agenda, an apprenticeship program, and an Office of Financial Empowerment. He also issued the first ever workforce report examining diversity in city government, which provide a benchmark for his efforts to diversify Boston's municipal workforce. Before taking office, Mayor Walsh served in the Massachusetts House of Representatives, where he was a leader on job creation and worker protections, substance abuse, mental health and homelessness, K-12 education and civil rights, as well as playing a key role in defending Massachusetts' pioneering stand on marriage equality. We are thankful for his ongoing support and, as Jim said, the partnership he has with the greater Boston business community, and we're thankful of the time he takes out of his busy schedule to be with us at the Government Affairs Forum breakfast every year. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming our Mayor, Martin J. Walsh.
Thank you very much, Miceal, and I want to thank you and to Jim and all the great work the Chamber does. I talk to mayors all the time about their relationship with their chambers, and I don't think there's a chamber in the country that's as strong as the one we have here in the city of Boston. So again, I want to congratulate Jim Rooney and Miceal Chamberlain and all the folks involved in the chamber. So thank you for allowing me today to be here. I also want to thank the Chamber and Jim for, I had the honor of helping kick off the Fierce Urgency of Now, the Chamber's Festival for Millennials of Color. We had a great conversation with the next generation of leaders in our city. 2018 is shaping up to be one of Boston's best years in our history. I want to congratulate the Boston Red Sox for winning the most games ever. Not to mention beating the Yankees again. And baseball's not the only way that we're winning. This year, Boston passed New York in total venture capital funding. We are #1 on the East Coast for advancing innovation, and the World Economic Forum recently recognized us as the 5th most future-proof city in the world due to our strength in education, technology, and the environment. In this time of uncertainty for our nation and our world, cities must lead, and Boston certainly is the leader of cities. We're the city that's world-class because it works for the middle class. We continue to add 20,000 new jobs each year. Unemployment has been below 4% since June of 2017. Our housing plan has produced nearly 28,000 new homes, and by the end of this year, we'll have created the more income-restricted affordable homes than any other 4-year period in the history of our city. Now we've increased our 2030 housing goal by 30%, from 53,000 houses to 69,000 homes. We launched a regional housing plan with 14 other cities and towns. We have over $9.3 billion of development and construction, and this year we've already added another $6.8 billion into the pipeline, well ahead of last year's pace. This summer, we appointed Boston's first African-American Police Commissioner, Willie Gross, and he was mentioned already today. Thank you, Commissioner. In June, we hosted the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We advanced a better national conversation, and we set a record for the number of mayors marching in a pride parade. We continued our historic run of a perfect AAA bond rating for the 5th consecutive year, and working with our public employee unions, we have saved $50 million in health care costs since 2014. And we are on track to fully fund employees' pension obligation by 2025, 15 years ahead of the state requirement. Working with the City Council in June, we enacted a $3.3 billion budget, balanced and on time, with record investments in our schools, public safety, roads and bike lanes, parks and libraries, arts and culture in every neighborhood. We've also selected a committee to begin the search for the next superintendent of the Boston Public Schools. In the meantime, we built 30 new school kitchens to provide students with fresh cooked food. We opened a state-of-the-art Dearborn STEM Academy, Boston's first new built high school in 23 years. We have more 4-year-olds in high-quality pre-kindergarten than any other time in our city's history. One of our high schools, Tech Boston, won the state championship in boys basketball. Our principal turnover was less than half the national average. The new leaders we did hire are 61% people of color. And Craig Martin of the Perkins School in South Boston was named Elementary Principal of the Year in Massachusetts, and Craig is with us this morning. I want to thank Craig. Boston is growing. Our population is approaching 700,000 for the first time since the 1960s. What's even better, more Bostonians are thriving. We are not only creating opportunity, we are constantly working on reducing inequality. And we are not only building new homes and businesses, we're sharing opportunity all across our city. I could spend all morning talking about our city's success, but today I need to do something different. I'm going to focus on one topic, but it's a topic that impacts everything we do in our city, all of our plans and policies, every sector of our economy, safety and quality of life in all of our neighborhoods. It's the challenge of climate change, and it's an urgent priority. I'm going to outline the scope of the threat posed by sea level rise, severe storms, flooding, and heat. And I'm going to offer a plan for us to meet this challenge comprehensively together as a city. It's a plan to protect our waterfront and much more. It's a plan to protect our people, protect their homes and their jobs, protect businesses large and small, protect schools, parks and roads, senior centers and daycare facilities. It's also a plan to connect our people to open space, to Boston Harbor, to opportunity. It's a vision of environmental, economic, and social resilience, and I'm going to ask for your help making it a reality. But first, let me tell you what we've done already. We've led the fight for climate action here in Boston. We've been ranked the #1 city for energy efficiency in the United States for 5 years. We are one of the first American cities to set targets of being carbon neutral by 2050. At the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris, we won the top award for community engagement. And when the White House pulled out of the Paris Agreement, we led a coalition of cities that remain committed to our planet and to our people's well-being. We expanded open space across the city, making us the #1 in the nation for residents' access to parks. Thank you. We're investing in green transportation with protected bike lanes in Roxbury, the South End, and North End. We've expanded bike share access in Mattapan, Rosendale, and Dorchester. And we've strengthened partnerships with the MBTA to increase public transit use. This June, we hosted an international climate summit. At that summit, we convened a group of cities focused on buying renewable energies collectively. At home, we're launching a community choice energy program to provide the same opportunity to our residents. I'm proud of our leadership, but the fact is climate change is already here. Just look at what other cities have faced. In 2012, Superstorm Sandy inflicted $70 billion worth of damage and caused the deaths of 71 people. It brought Lower Manhattan's financial sector to a standstill. Last year, Hurricane Harvey caused $125 billion worth of damage and 68 deaths in Houston and southeast Texas. Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico and caused over 3,000 people to lose their lives. We welcome hundreds of survivors to Boston, and I saw the impact up close when I visited Puerto Rico with Red Sox manager Alex Cora. Last month, Florence caused the evacuation of the Carolina coast with at least 45 deaths. And just last week, Hurricane Michael was the 4th strongest storm ever to make landfall in the United States. It's already done over $30 billion worth of damage and killed at least 26 people. The science is clear. Climate change has given us hotter and more volatile weather. It's amplified the frequency and impact of severe storms, and it has increased the rate of sea level rise. An international panel of scientists just released a new report saying major impacts could hit worldwide as early as 2040. We don't have to look that far for early warning signs. A dumpster floating down the street at 4-Point Channel in January, the Blue Line tracks underwater in March, floodwaters in Christopher Columbus Park reaching the Rose Kennedy Greenway for the first time, king tides that routinely flood the Harbor Walk, driftwood on a soccer field at Lopresti Park in East Boston. The hottest and most humid summer in our recorded history this year. Climate change is very real to Bostonians. We are working every day to be a climate-ready Boston. We review and upgrade emergency management systems across every department to be prepared as possible. We are launching a resilient design standard for infrastructure, so private construction on public rights-of-way can protect our neighborhoods from flooding. Now we're designing a resilient zoning overlay district to strengthen building requirements in the floodplain. But even if we are the lead in our response, the race has only begun. The dark areas on this map shows Boston's flood risk in the year 2070. We're not just planning for the next storm we will face, we're planning for the next storms the next generation will face. This is a moment they'll look back on and judge us by. I want to address one proposal that's been discussed for several years, a massive barrier across Boston Harbor. Besides taking decades to complete, a barrier would bring its own set of serious ecological issues. The fact is, we're all here in the city we love because of a naturally sheltered harbor. We built Boston on it. We cleaned it up. Instead of walling off our harbor, we need to work with it. Shoreline projects are more feasible and more effective ways to increase our city's resilience. We have to focus on the most vulnerable areas on the flood maps, the entry points for water into our city. Here you see Four Point Channel in Moakley Park. They're underwater in a storm. And they also start flood paths that run deep into our neighborhoods from Chinatown and the South End to Dorchester and Roxbury. We have to take action to protect our neighborhoods. We need to address unique conditions at each point of our shore and create tailored solutions responsive to the community's needs. So that's what we've done. We've engaged with the experts, we've listened to the community's deep local knowledge, and we've identified ways to protect our neighborhoods that also enhance access and enjoyment of our waterfront. Today, we're releasing Climate Ready Plan for South Boston. It joins an existing plan for East Boston and Charlestown. And now we're launching a plan for the downtown and the North End, as well as the entire Dorchester shoreline. Together, these plans offer coastal resilient solutions spanning our 47-mile shoreline. This is our vision for a resilient Boston. It's a system not of barricades, but of beaches and parks and trails and open space that are elevated to block floods and enhance and unlock opportunity. It calls for 67 acres of new space and 122 acres of revitalized open space on the waterfront. It links to our Emerald Necklace and reflects the same values of public health, public access, and world-class design. It's a vision of a city more connected to our waterfront and to each other. I'm excited to share our vision and our progress towards achieving it. Let me take you on a brief journey down the waterfront. In East Boston and Charlestown, our goal is to restore and renew the space along the Inner Harbor. In Charlestown, we've committed funds to elevate Main Street as part of the Rutherford Ave Sullivan Square redesign. This will block the primary flood pathways through the neighborhood. The next steps include elevating Ryan Playground and redeveloping the Schraff Center waterfront. In East Boston, we've completed a deployable flood wall on the East Boston Greenway. When storm surge hits, the wall can be raised to block marginal street flood paths, protecting over 4,200 residents and at least 70 businesses and critical utility and transit infrastructure. We're working with Tom Glenn at Massport, along with the East Boston community on Pierce Park Phase 2. It will double the amount of green space to 10 acres and elevate it for protection. We must also restore Wood Island and Bell Island Marsh. It's the last tidal salt marsh in Boston and will disappear if we don't act. We're working with Suffolk Downs Development on a resilient design with community access. We've also identified opportunities along Bennington Street to block storm surge. And we're working with community groups to increase access to the waterfront. Here you can see the opportunity for a renovated and a resilient Constitution Beach. It's a perfect example of our win-win strategy. We will make the places our neighbors love the spaces that keep our neighborhoods safe. Turning to the downtown and the North End waterfront, flood risks threaten our financial center, our tourist destination, and our oldest residential neighborhoods. But we're not about to retreat from our historic waterfront. Instead, we have to adapt and activate it. We'll elevate sections of the Harbor Walk, we'll create connections to the Rose Kennedy Greenway, and we'll reimagine Sergeant's Wharf. It's now a parking lot. We'll revitalize and elevate Langone Popolo Park on the North End, and we'll work with the Friends of the Christopher Columbus on a new design. And we'll enhance Long Wharf as a hub for water transportation. In other words, we'll make the harbor where Boston was born the gateway to Boston's future. In South Boston, our new resilient plan shows how climate action can bring a city together. The conversation is often about the seaport. In fact, new buildings are being developed at high standard of resilience, including Seaport Square, where Amazon and other companies will be located, and projects like 150 Seaport Boulevard are expanding our Harbor Walk. It's older building stock that we need to be more worried about. And it's the points on the shore where floodwaters enter our city. That's why last fall I announced our intention to create a signature resilient park system around Four Point Channel. We are working with all property owners around the channel to make this plan a reality. It's the kind of collaboration will be essential to all of our future work. I want to thank General Electric for taking the lead on the resilient building design, Gillette for advancing a climate-ready plan for their waterfront, as well as Synergy, Honeyman, the Children's Museum, and Mass Development. In addition, we're applying for FEMA mitigation grant of $10 million to begin the resilient work. And the Boston Water and Sewer have begun installing essential infrastructure for reducing flood risk. In the meantime, we are nearing completion of Martin's Park, the first step in the new 4-point channel. Named for Martin Richard, it's an inclusive playground with a climate-ready design. It embodies the values we want for all of our future parks. Across the neighborhood at Moakley Park, we've been working with residents on a resilient redesign. Whatever emerges from this community process, it's going to protect South Boston, Dorchester, Roxbury, the South End, and Back Bay. It will be even a more welcoming space than it is now. And the first people a resilient Moakley Park will protect are the thousands of residents of the Ann Lynch, Old Colony, and Mary Ellen McCormick public housing developments, as well as their neighbors. These developments in this park represents Boston's historic commitment to our collective well-being. That's the legacy we build on. And when we complete the Emerald Necklace along Columbia Road from Franklin Park to Moakley Park, we'll increase access to the waterfront for all the residents of our city. We've committed $11 million from the sale of Winthrop Square Garage for that purpose. The rest of our coastline to the south, we envision as a resilient, accessible, and connected Dorchester shoreline, the kind that you see here. Notice how many residential communities this shoreline can protect. We are working with the state on the Morrissey Boulevard redesign to stop the flooding, protect neighbors from future risk, and open up more of our waterfront. The Neponset River Trail starts in Mattapan. We want to complete its connections to the Harbor Walk from Tinian Beach to Victory Road Park. We'll continue all the way up to Columbia Point, where we have a strong partnership with UMass Boston, and we'll work with the developer of the Bayside site. We'll open up our waterfront for our largest, most diverse neighborhoods. And we'll ask residents what amenities they'd like to see, including more public transit and better roadway connections. This is the opportunity a resilient Boston Harbor presents, to protect Boston, connect Boston, enhance Boston now and for future generations. We've already started to make it a reality. We've made investments. We've launched community conversations. We've completed projects, and we've increased resilience on every stretch of our waterfront. But there's no partial credit for this project. We have a lot more work to do. We need to do it together. At each point of the plan, there are challenges. Multiple property owners, multiple jurisdictions, funding needs. The Harbor Walk alone touches 356 different properties. It's a shared resource and a shared obligation. We can't let these man-made hurdles hold us back. The risk is too great and the opportunity too good. I mentioned what major storms have done in other cities. Consider what's at stake in Boston. Our downtown financial engines are at stake. Hundreds of small businesses are at stake. Many thousands of homes are at stake. Billions of dollars of public and private investment in property and infrastructure are at stake. No project we take on today will cost anywhere near as much as doing nothing. We've done the math. In East Boston, we could invest $160 million in resiliency, or we could do nothing and expect damages of $480 million. In Charlestown, we could invest $50 million now or pay $200 million later. In South Boston, we can invest $1 billion, or we could pay $19 billion in citywide damages when 4-Point Channel and Dorchester Bay meet and flood the heart of our city. We either invest now or we pay a much bigger price later. And we'll pay that price in more than dollars. We'll pay it in jobs lost, small businesses that never recover, homes destroyed and families displaced. That's why we're investing millions of dollars at these sites I mentioned today. And we're going to go further. To begin, we pledge at least 10% of all new capital spending in the city of Boston to resilient projects. We're also developing resources like green bonding through our Renew Boston Trust, the Community Preservation Act the voters passed 2 years ago, and public-private coalitions like the Green Ribbon Commission. But however committed that we are and however creative we are, the city of Boston cannot do this alone. The impacts of climate change and the benefits of resilience are shared across every level of government, every class of property, every sector of our economy. So we must also share in the obligation as well. We will work with our neighboring cities and towns on a harbor-wide solution. And I'm grateful to our state partners for the work that we've done together so far. But we have so much more to do. We have to design and fund more ambitious solutions. Boston is the capital city of Massachusetts and the engine of the New England's economy. The state and the region depend on our resilience. We're also going to work with our congressional delegation on opportunities like the FEMA grants, reminding the federal government that mitigation aid now is cheaper than disaster relief later. Philanthropy also has a vital role to play. The Barr Foundation is our leader in this plan. I ask everyone who wants to have deep and lasting impacts to join the Barr Foundation and get involved. We want our plan to be on the leading edge of where social equity and climate resilience intersect. Finally, I appeal directly to the business community in Boston. I know that as property owners and decision makers and citizens, you are engaged with climate change and its impacts. You've built green buildings, you've elevated your systems, you've put in flood barriers. Those are critical steps, but they can't be the only steps, because one day soon you could find yourself on an island in your resilient building, literally. And neither your workers nor our first responders will be able to get there. Resilience is an ecosystem asset, not an individual one. Property lines and no protections against floods. We need to weave our efforts together into one resilient shore that is stronger than the sum of its parts. That's what our plan makes possible. If your property is on the water and your property is 1 mile inland, you're at risk. Wherever you are in Boston, the ability of your employees to get to work, the ability of your suppliers to make deliveries are at risk. We can and we must fund and build a solution together. The climate work that we've done and the plan that I share today protect your property, protect your workforce, protect your investments. And we need your leadership to make it a reality. Whether it's installing a resilient infrastructure or contributing to an open space upgrade, you can strengthen your investments. You can protect the community that you are part of. And we can create an even stronger city to do business in. I hope, like me, you'll see it as our city's obligation to the generations who come after us. I also hope, like me, you see it as Boston's opportunity to once again lead a way forward on an issue of vital national importance. My team will be reaching out on how you can get involved. But don't wait for us. Visit the website to learn more. We welcome your input, your expertise, your investments, your partnerships. I started off today talking about our city's success. I'm not just here to say it's all at risk from climate change. I'm here to say that our success is proof that we have the talent, the resources, and innovation we need to rise to this challenge. We've done big things on our harbor before. We did them together. Everybody played a role. We started a revolution that made America, and we welcomed the immigrants who built America. We filled the Back Bay and created the Esplanade and built neighborhoods on land reclaimed from the water. We made room for an international airport, a public university, and some of the best urban parks and beaches in the world. We created a harbor walk, thanks to the foresight of city planners. Not long ago, we dug a third harbor tunnel, we built an iconic bridge, and buried 2 interstate highways, bringing the people of Boston closer to their waterfront. We cleaned the harbor, opened the harbor islands, and now we don't just see people, but we see whales and seals and all kinds of marine life returning to our waters. Today, I call on those same qualities of hard work and high ambition. Boston's drive not only to solve tough problems, but set new standards as we enter a new era in our harbor city's history. Let us show the world that resilience is more than the ability to survive adversity. It's the will to emerge even stronger than we were before. That's the promise of a resilient Boston. That's the past, the present, and the future of our city. That's what I know that we can do together. I want to thank you for being here this morning. God bless you, and God bless the city of Boston.
Well, Mayor, I think they liked your speech. I can't imagine that there is a more bold, deep, and honest conversation going on about the subject of climate change anywhere in this country. So, Mayor, thank you for your leadership in using this as a platform to talk about all the work that you've done and the work that you want to do together with all of us. I'm going to open it up to questions, but I'd like to follow up just a little bit on that primary subject matter. You mentioned what's going on in other cities across the country, and other cities are thinking about it, and I know that you're more and more tuned into how other cities are thinking about it. Any lessons of things that other cities are doing, or as importantly, how are they financing these kinds of things? You and I did go down to Manhattan and Brooklyn 4 or 5 years ago and looked at the effects of Sandy. The people that spoke to us said that every solution begins with a B, as in billions. So how are cities thinking about paying for this?
Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. Let me just kind of touch upon two things. Number one is when we look at the plan and we think about how cities are responding to climate change and what the plans are, in New Orleans and New York, they were laying a plan out after the fact. And we started to think that we don't want to wait till after. We want to think about who's doing some proactive things. So if you look at, go over to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, that's really what we think about what some of those European cities are doing. They're laying out a plan now before a disaster happens, and that's key. The funding mechanism is going to be three-part. It's going to be public investment, it's going to be private investment, it's going to be philanthropic investment. And we don't have a price tag for this. These are all individual projects. It's going to take years to build these out. But we are working on certain areas like the 4-point channel that we're digging down now. We're going to have actually a plan. The FEMA mitigation money that we're looking for is to help us design a park around that area in 4-point channel. And we've been working with different philanthropic organizations and trustees of the reservation and the Bar Foundation and other organizations to really think about certain parks that we're looking at building out and how does that fit into the resilient plan. So the investment will be made by all of us. It can't just be one aspect. I mentioned that the City of Boston is going to do 10% of the capital budget. We already have $230 million of resilient projects in our capital budget right now that are underway, and that will be about another 15 to 20 million per year on some of the projects, but that doesn't mean that we're going to stop there.
Maybe one more question. Boston is one city. This is a global challenge. You mentioned Amsterdam and some other cities, and we see what's going on in the national and international level. Beyond the interventions you mentioned here in Boston, how can you use your platform sort of more nationally and perhaps even internationally on this issue?
I think it's important. Boston is a city that is a leader in this on the international level, along with Eric Garcetti out in California and in Los Angeles and other mayors across the United States of America. So we're going to do everything we can. I think regionally here, we have elected officials that are here today with us that represent City of Boston, outside the City of Boston. We need to work collectively together. The Mass Metro Mayors Coalition, we really have a main focus on regionalization. We've done it on economic development. We've done it on housing. We've had conversations about the climate. We're not worried about crossing boundaries. And I think the plan that we laid out today can help cities and towns that are connected to us and up and down the coast. I've already had conversations with Mayor Driscoll in Salem and what they're doing in Salem and protecting their harbor waterfront there, and working with Tom McGee and Lynn. So we're having these dialogues up and down the coast to preserve and protect our shoreline. We still have working ports here in Massachusetts and in Boston on the coastline. So it really is important that we work collectively together and partnership with the legislature, with the council, with the governor. This is all of us together. This is all of us moving together. And I think on an international level, people certainly are looking to Boston. When we had the climate summit here in Boston, we had mayors that came from China, from England, from United States of America, from Canada. So we had people, a lot of interest here in the city, looking how we're going to do resiliency moving forward together.
Well, we certainly have the political leadership and the brain power to tackle this problem, so thank you for that. Questions from the audience? We have some microphones that are going around. I see one 3/4 of the way back in the middle.
David B. Gelfer with NAOP. Mr. Mayor, I just want to again think you're doing a great job. The city is doing a great job. And your administration has been focused on this for quite a while. But I want to ask about some of your other partners and seeing where you think they are in this whole process. One is, of course, utilities. And if you look to New York and the problems they had with Sandy, it was sort of the problems with utilities, with the mass transit, and with the highways that were serious problems to the failure of the city to be able to handle that storm. How are these agencies and the utilities working with you, and where do they stand as far as the prioritizing for these issues?
Yeah, we're all in this together. They know that Eversource is in the room today, NSTAR's in the room today, Water and Sewer's in the room today. Certainly have had many conversations. In the speech I referenced the Blue Line flooding, working with the state and the Stephanie Pollock and the general manager of the MBTA. We have to be in this together. There's no point of protecting storm surge into the city and have it be crippled because of our utilities go down. So we're working very closely with all of our utilities as we continue this plan down the road. Water and Sewer is working on plans right now in the city of Boston, continuing upgrading our systems and being prepared for storm surge. So you can't do this. This is all of us. And today's call is to all of the partners in the city of Boston. It can't just be one aspect. It has to be all of us working together.
Hey, good morning, Greater Boston family. I am Craig Martin, the proud principal of the Michael J. Perkins School. Yeah. I apologize for my tardiness. I was working on the spirit of resiliency with one of my young people who would not let me go. So I got here as quickly as I can. As a part of the South Boston community, Mayor Walsh, thank you so much for giving us a very vivid image of what our Boston, the city of Boston can be. One of the things I'm curious about is the Carson Beach is actually waterfront property for our school community. We can actually see it from the school. So I'm wondering, what is it that our students can do now? So how can we prepare our students who are going to inherit and become the global leaders moving forward to actually take on some of this work so that they also embrace the potential that you're laying out in your vision?
Well, thank you, Mr. Martin. And before I answer the question, let me just tell anyone in the school, anyone here, if you want to visit an amazing school, go to the Perkins School in South Boston. Just walk in the front door. You will feel the love and the life led by the principal, all the way down to the teachers, to the paras, to the kids. It's an amazing school community. So please go down there. We are in the early phases of redesigning Moakley Park. So we will make sure that the Parks Department reaches out to the Perkins and gets the kids involved in the planning of the park, as well as working with the state and the elected officials on how we're going to manage Carson Beach on one side of Day Boulevard, on the other side of Day Boulevard, Moakley Park, and how are we going to make that connection so that we can have a resilient and more open space and better open space for our young people and for our older people, but also how do we make those connections? So somebody will reach out to you today.
I thought I saw, was there a question over this? Yeah, over here. There's a microphone.
Hi, being originally from South Louisiana, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, we've seen much more than Katrina. But part of Katrina the problem was the federal government had not maintained their responsibilities that they said they would do on the levees. What are you seeing from the federal government in terms of how they perceive their role in working through what's obviously a problem?
Well, we have a person that's occupying the corner office that says climate change is fictitious and it's not real. We have partnership, obviously, in the federal government under the Obama administration. We had Gina McCarthy, who was from Boston, who is the Secretary of Environmental Affairs, who did an incredible job. I think the federal government at some point needs to realize that they're writing these big checks after the fact. Especially what's happened just this year alone when you just come up the coast and you see what happened in Florida last week and Carolinas a couple weeks before that and what's going on. So we're going to continue to work with FEMA and try and get them a better partner. We don't have the same situation that you had in New Orleans with the dams and the dikes that that were ignored. We do have them in Boston. We have a couple that the state's working on now down in the North End area, down by the Boston Garden. So we're working on that program. The state's really leading the efforts on that to make sure that levee is protected and that the Charles River doesn't have a rush into the communities. But I don't see a real, other than our delegation, I don't see a real commitment by the federal government today. And I think that is going to have to be, hopefully after the elections that happen in a couple weeks, hopefully we'll have more people that are like-minded. The report I referenced earlier today that was put out last week, that climate change is real, and then by 2040 we could have major problems in the world. Those are real. And when you look at the flooding that we've had, in 2015 we had we had 106 inches of snow. We set a record. This year, we had the most 90-plus degree days on record in Boston this year alone. So there's something going on there. So we need to be prepared. And you know, even right now, absent a real strong partnership in the federal government, that doesn't mean that we don't keep moving forward. We have to keep moving forward. We have to do, a lot of work has been done too, by the way. Let me just be clear. A lot of the work on the climate has been talked about in this city for many, many years, in this region for many, many years. Many of you in this room have had that conversation. So what we want to do is kind of push that conversation faster and start to see some real solutions faster as we move forward.
We've got right up front here, microphone on the way.
Good morning. Monica Nikelski with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. So you referenced the IPCC report and the resiliency adaptation strategies that Boston is planning for. But within the report, they also state that change can happen now. And I guess we're curious to learn if there are any policies, regulations that the City of Boston plans to enact to further the mitigation opportunities that we have in addressing carbon emissions and these climate change issues. For example, the City of Austin just banned food waste from entering their landfills.
That's a loaded question, and I can probably stand up here all day and answer it. When I say a loaded question in a good way, you know, we're certainly we've committed to be carbon neutral by 2050. We're ahead of the space that was originally planned. We're at the end of this year, plastic bags will be banned in the City of Boston. We have the community choice energy plan that's going out now, and we're going to be where people can choose. We're working on that process right now. We're working on, we did a pilot program at the Boston Planning and Development Agency for buildings and green buildings and to reduce emissions. And we have a whole list of action items that we have done. And this plan is not about a futuristic plan. We're working on this plan now. If you go into this plan right now, and I know it's a little different than your question, but in the North End, Langone Pupolo Park is actually under design right now. We're designing that. We're designing Moakley Park right now. We've been in the process of making full designs in Moakley Park. The seawall barrier that's in East Boston is there. We built it. We put it in this year's budget. Pierce Park Phase 2, Massport's working on it right now. So a lot of what you see on this map is public investment that's already underway. Some of it is in the bond bill, and some of it's in different ways of payment formulas. So we're looking at, you can't just do one aspect and not do the other. We have not looked at food waste yet. We have done a pilot program in Jamaica Plain. We have not looked at a full composting program across the City of Boston yet. And we also have to continue to strengthen our recycling program in the city. Not everyone is doing that. And obviously there's some issues with getting rid of the recycled waste. So we, on different aspects. Chris Cook is our chief of the environment here in the city, and he has a complete office that we're working on to make sure that his office is focused on this every single day. I mean, the capacity in that office is getting more and more every day. So we still have a long way to go, a lot of work to do, but we also have to balance it a little bit here in the city. When you think about the restrictions that we put on buildings and the restrictions we put on landowners and developers, we want to make sure as we do it, we balance a balanced approach. You can't just say that it's going to be the business community that's going to brunt all of the costs of doing what we're doing here. It has to be across the board. It's working with you guys, Blue Cross and Blue Bikes, and expanding Blue Bike program where we've expanded into the neighborhoods that I've said. They never had bikes before. They never had ride-sharing bikes before. Now we have them in Rosendale and Roxbury and Mattapan area, in West Roxbury areas. They never had those before. So we got to, again, convince people and expand as we go on.
Well, Mayor, you're in a room full of business leaders, and leaders look at a challenge and search for the opportunity. And I just want to read a couple of statements I wrote down from the mayor's speech. He said, "Make the harbor the gateway to Boston's future." He said, "The opportunity for a resilient Boston harbor presents." This is taking what people view as a challenge and turning it into an opportunity for the future of Boston. Thank you for thinking about it that way. Thank you for enjoying and engaging with the business community in that way. And we look forward to collaborating with you on seizing the opportunity that a resilient Boston presents. Thank you, Mayor Walsh.